And you're live.
Oh, hey there. Welcome to Painting Together with Acrylics. I'm Gigi Chen in my studio in New York City. So I'm really excited to be painting with you guys today. And today we're going to be looking at the details of an old wooden door. Now I love this idea just because sometimes we kind of look at something and we don't really think too much about it, like an old door. So what we're doing is we're going to be painting this and looking at it almost like an abstraction. But we're going to be talking about making little details and how to really get into these little bits and pieces to make something that's kind of spectacular. So I hope you guys hang out and make these paintings with me. So if you look down below, you will see in the description notes all of our materials. So we're going to go over that right now together. So let me get into this. So this is my sample painting, and you can see all these like beautiful colors we're going to be using together. So it does look very much like an abstract painting. So we are going to start off with a big brush, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about like all of our materials. So I really want you guys to have water, to clean your brushes with. You're going to have a variety of brushes, but today we are going to start off with like a big brush if it's possible. Hopefully you do. We're going to have white, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber. We're going to have this like very light turquoise color, and we're going to use black. So not too many colors, so it's pretty limited palette. And so I also really want to talk about the fact that we're using this turquoise color as the main paint. But if you don't have this color, it's totally okay, because we're basically making the illusion of like a door panel. So you're gonna have this green. So if you have like red and you wanna make this red, totally okay. Blue, make this anything you want. Like don't be intimidated by the fact that I'm using this paint color, because this is we're literally gonna be painting a painting of paint. And we're also going to be using some acrylic medium. So I like to use this, and it's in matte. This also comes in glossy. If you don't have it, it's okay. Just have a little bit of water, so don't worry too much about it. And I'm actually going to be working on a wood panel, but if you guys have canvas or a thick mixed media paper, that also really works. So whatever, some people actually sit and do this with watercolors, which is kind of cool because it's an acrylic class. So I'm having this piece of wood. I'm going to switch this out, make a lot of noise while I'm doing it. And if you look down below, you'll also see the reference pictures. So you can kind of see it. It's kind of small on the screen, but you can download the reference picture down below. And I also have here a wet palette, and also in the show notes is a link to how to make yourself a wet palette. Basically, a wet palette is just a very thin sponge, and you can use like a piece of palette paper, or you can also use parchment paper like you do for baking, which is kind of awesome. So hello everyone. Hello Elizabeth, Margaret. Hello Margaret from London. Hello. Hi Chris, how are you doing? Hi Arlene, nice to see you guys again. Hi Suzanne. And yeah, I want to know what you guys have been up to. How was your holidays? How was everything with what you guys have been doing? Hope you guys have been painting also along. And I hope you guys have actually had a chance to catch up with our previous like 5 episodes. So this is episode 6. So I am going to start off this whole painting by just making I'm going to take my burnt umber, add a little bit of white, and we're just going to put down an underpainting. So we're just going to lay down some underpainting, meaning that we're going to put down a first layer first. So it's not going to be really all that fancy. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. We're going to go right ahead and just start going. How many of you guys have actually done some of the other classes, the previous 6 classes, or how many of you guys are just kind of hanging out and watching? Like I kind of think painting classes are really fun to watch. Sometimes I sit through other people's painting classes online and see what it's like, because in a lot of ways teaching is pretty new for me. So watching other instructors instruct is actually really fun. So we're just going to put down a layer of brown. So someone here is asking me, can you use the same tricks in watercolors? I actually think some of these ideas really do translate, because you're still kind of layering, right? And I think that something that I love about doing acrylics is that they dry really fast, and so do watercolors. And so you can do one layer at a time, So that really, really helps. So also guys, if you guys have any technique questions, put it in capital letters so I can see it better. Because I have the screen in front of me and the painting is directly in front of me. And you know, getting older, it's hard to kind of see too far. So if you guys have any like serious technique questions, like please just put it in capital letters and I will try to answer as many questions as possible. So here we go. We're just laying down some underpainting. So I love to work from dark to light when I do acrylic painting. So this also doesn't have to be super perfect. In fact, the more imperfect, the better, I think, because we're doing something because it's an old door, there's a lot of like crevices in there that we want to kind of capture, and that'll really help out a lot. If you don't make it super perfect, that's even better, because you know, underneath all of that paint is like this kind of stripped wood, and it's also decaying, and because of that, it leaves sort of like these like weird cracks and marks, and I want to be able to capture that. And so if your underpainting is kind of streaky, awesome, it doesn't really matter. So we're just still putting down some umber, some white, and some ochre. And it doesn't have to be perfect. See, it's not even that perfect. I'm just kind of mixing the paint as I go along. Let's see. I'm going to just keep doing. So remember, if you guys are just kind of catching up or you're just joining us, all of the materials are down below in the description, and you can kind of check out what we have available to kind of look at for the reference pictures and the materials. So if you're just kind of hanging out and you want to paint later, that's awesome, because then you can pick up all the materials later for all of this. Oh, the substrate. So someone's asking me about the medium. So let me show you what I'm using. So why don't you take a look at this. I'm using the open acrylic medium in matte. So this also comes in glossy, but I like using the matte just because I don't really like my paintings really shiny. So why don't you take notes, Elizabeth, and see what I'm using. It's a slow drying acrylic from Golden. So this is pretty easy to get. You can get this really at any store, and I actually think they even sell them at regular craft stores. And this will help you move the paint around, and it sort of slows down the drying just a little bit, but mostly instead of using water to sort of move the paint, you can use this, and then it won't dilute the paint as much, and it sort of gives this like nice like film of the paint. So there's also something they also make called a retarder, and that really slows down the paint and keeps it wet a lot longer. But I mostly use this because it dries sort of fast, but not too fast, so it kind of keeps the paint from like, I can sort of extend my paint a little bit with it. So this is really good. So just take notes, and this is what I mostly like to use. So I'm gonna keep going on, making this underpainting. Yeah, how many of you guys have tried, because you guys take this class, have tried mediums for the very first time? Like that will be, I think eventually we are going to actually have like a full list of everything, but I think in the list down below, it might actually say that I use this stuff because I really prefer it. And as I said, if you want to buy glossy, you can totally buy glossy because that'll just bring a different sort of feel to your paintings. I don't love glossy paint, so I don't tend to use the glossy kind, but you can. Some people really love like beautiful glossy paintings. So I'm just going to fill this in. And I'm just going to let this kind of sit for a second. Let's see. And we're just going to be switching up brushes as we go along, but I'm going to be using this big brush. So I'm kind of using a pretty large brush. Like, you know, if you guys have a small one, totally okay. And I really don't discriminate against what kind of brushes you use. Like I use all sorts of brands. So you guys can try anything you want with this, but I like to have like a lot of varieties of brushes to play along with like that. Okay, So now we're going to start separating out some of these colors. Oh, so someone's asking me about the boards I use. Okay, so what I'm really just using is just a piece of board. It's just a piece of wood. So I actually bought this at the hardware store, and the guy said it's poplar wood, and it actually came pre-primed because I guess some construction workers want a pre-primed surface. But and I got these cut to 8x10, and that's really inexpensive actually. But if you also can go and get some pre-cut wood or canvases or whatever from the art store. So I would say, I mean, Elizabeth, are you using, what kind of surfaces have you been using for this class? Because I know you've sat in for this class before. I noticed that some people are using canvas. Totally okay. I mean, I don't love using canvas. That's why I use mostly smooth board. But I've also used canvas before, and it works just fine. And some people have actually been showing me that they're using some really thick watercolor paper, which also, hey, whatever works for you guys. Like, honestly, I kind of think that I don't want to ever make you guys feel like you're in this class and you don't have these like fancy tools, because I actually don't always have fancy tools either. You know, I don't want you to feel like you need fancy paint, you know, to run this class with me. So I'm going to add a little bit more brown. I'm running out of brown already, or rather the burnt umber. And now we're just going to go into our second layer, and we're just going to start to go and like start to lighten this a little bit more. But if you want, you can also, and also guys, remember to have a rag. I keep a rag on my lap, you know, so you guys can't see it. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker. Just kind of go through this a little bit more. Oh, so Elizabeth is saying she's using gessoed sketchbook pages and a cotton canvas. Oh yeah, that totally works. But you know, I always love to try different things. Like if you want to go and try out like a piece of wood and just gesso it, like because that's like pretty inexpensive, you can see what that's like. I mean, I like to try different surfaces just so you kind of know what you like, right? Like I think that's kind of important. I think the best part of being an artist is getting the chance to experiment, and you just shouldn't be afraid to experiment. Like obviously things can be cost prohibitive, but you know, I think that like going to the lumber store, not so bad. Sometimes I hang out with I know the people at the lumber store and they give me like extra pieces of wood, and that's actually really awesome. Yeah, so if you also go to the art stores, I think a lot of those panels are made from birch. So, and those have cradles in the back, meaning that you can kind of hang them a little bit easier, you know? Like a piece of wood, like I would probably just attach something in the back to hang it up. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush just a little bit, and I'm going to start putting down like a light coat. So I'm going to take this umber and just kind of mix it in, this ochre, and just mix it in with the umber, add a little bit of white. And I'm just going to start lightening it. And then I'm just going to start doing things like this. Like I'm painting this way. Okay, we're going to paint up and down. And by painting up and down, you can kind of get the grain of the wood. Oh, can I teach? Someone's asking me the best way to use medium. I mean, basically what I do is you can mix in some of the paint fully and just make a small batch, or you could just kind of be like me and just kind of dip. I keep a little bottle cap of it next to me, or you can kind of squeeze it right onto your you know, your palette. But I like to keep it right here. You know, I don't always show it on camera because you know, sometimes you don't show it on camera. And what I do is sometimes I just kind of dip it. I dip my brush in and I just kind of do that. But like anything else, I really want you guys to experiment with how to use it. You know, like I don't want you to feel like there's one way. Like sometimes if you want paint to kind of last a little bit longer on your wet palette, you can mix up a whole batch with a little bit. I don't think that you should use a ton of medium. I like to kind of use a little bit at a time. You know, I don't think it's great to use a lot of medium just because you know, it can kind of change the way like the paint sits. And also, unless you want your painting to dry a lot slower, then you can use more medium, but I just use a little bit at a time. So I kind of just dip it in if I'm just trying to extend my paint a little bit. And I mean, like anything else, I want you guys to experiment. Like you can make whole batches with a little bit of medium, or you can just do what I do, which is just use a little bit at a time. Like I kind of prefer it. I prefer to just kind of use a little bit at a time just because I want my painting to dry. You know, like I think that if you want your painting to dry a lot slower, you can use more medium or you can use a retarder, which I don't really use on this class because I don't want to give you guys like a ton of stuff to have to buy for this class. But it's literally called a retarder, which means it slows down the paint from drying. Okay, so I'm just lightening, and it's also streaky. It's okay that it's a little bit streaky. I know that during one of my classes, someone asked me about the streakiness, and if things are getting really streaky, you wait for it to dry and then you paint over it. But in this case, keeping it a little streaky might be okay because we're trying to create like an imperfect surface today. We're trying to create the illusion of an imperfect surface. Okay. Okay. My friend is telling me that she used her daughter's like art materials without asking. I mean, if you're gonna use them, they gotta be used, right? Okay, so here we go. So we have now like a little bit more of a surface, and now we're gonna lighten it even more. So I'm right-handed, so I work from left to right. So I'm basically just sort of layering, and I'm gonna add a little bit more white to this ochre, and burnt umber. And I'm also gonna just sort of, I have like a lot of uneven paint on my brush, and I'm just gonna go like this. Okay, like you don't have to do this. I'm sort of having a little bit of uneven paint on my brush is sort of a nice way of, I'm gonna add a little bit more water. So I'm also sort of just creating a surface. I actually really loved making the sample painting for this because it sort of had to push me away from, tightening up because I paint a lot of animals. When you paint a lot of animals, you kind of use a tiny brush and you're just sort of tightening up and you're making little marks at a time. So I kind of really loved working on this sample painting just because I had to kind of think a little bit like more loose, because in the end, this kind of looks like an abstract painting. Okay. Just had to move my lights, guys. Okay. Just gonna adjust my light because it's a little bit bright right now. We'll readjust it. That's a little bit better. It gets dark here early, but I have all these lights here in the studio. So it gets a little bit, there we go, that's a lot better. Yeah, I'm in New York City. We kind of get dark here around 4:15 now, so in about an hour it's gonna get really dark. Okay, so we're just gonna keep making it lighter and lighter. I'm gonna add a little bit more. Add this like mix, and then we're just gonna start doing this. So already this kind of looks pretty cool, it's kind of the start of something. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start creating like marks to kind of demarcate each wood panel. Okay, Hello, Kimberly from Illinois. Are you painting with us today, Kimberly? Or are you just hanging out? I'm going to... So you guys can kind of use any brush to do this. Like I'm trying to come up with a flatter brush that I'm more comfortable with. So you guys can use any brush that you feel comfortable with creating a line with. Okay, so we're gonna take this, I'm gonna take some black and mix it a little bit with the umber. So it's not like super, super black. And I'm just gonna create like a line to demarcate. I don't know about you guys, I don't know how you guys feel comfortable with creating a straight line. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water to make that move. Doesn't have to be perfect. Or we all kind of strive a little bit for perfection with this. There, it's one line. Oh, nice. It's nice when our videos just kind of pop up. We're doing this class every Thursday at 3 p.m. streaming, and then you can see the rest of them afterwards. You know, this is our 6th episode, so we have 5 classes behind us, you know, a few more ahead. And that'll be kind of fun. This has been it's kind of fun, like making live classes with you guys. Okay. And then we'll do another one. And this is just demarcate each panel of this door. I'm using a little bit of medium to move my paint around. You see, when you do that, it kind of makes the paint a little bit more loose, a little bit more velvety. Can't really see so much of that on camera, but it kind of moves it along, and I don't need to, and it's a little thinner, you see, when you do that, when you add a little bit of that. Oh, nice. Kimberly, yeah, it's really great that you're kind of hanging out and watching. Yeah, we're painting this little panel. We're painting a little wood panel, and today's class is actually about going right into like details of something that you wouldn't normally look at, you know, and think twice about, like an old wooden door. Okay, there we go. Another line, and then one more. And that's just to demarcate it. We're going to go back and work on that some more too. It doesn't have to be a perfect straight line, because I don't think mine is going to be perfect straight lines. There we go. Okay, so what we're gonna do, trying to think about what the next steps would be that would make a lot of sense for us. We're gonna start demarcating where the paint's gonna be, like the paint splatter. Okay, so I'm gonna be using this turquoise, but for those of you guys so we're literally making a painting of paint on a wood panel. So I think that if you guys don't happen to have this color, it's totally okay. You guys can, since we're painting a painting of paint, you don't have to necessarily have this particular color. If you have a blue, if you have a red, like whatever you want, you know? But I love these little turquoise colors. So that's why we're making it kind of turquoise. So I'm just gonna start laying it in. I'm gonna lay it in, and because it's a painting of paint and it's a painting of old paint, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna leave strategically some places. I'm gonna leave some parts unpainted, and just sort of leave it like I'm looking at my sample painting, and I'm also looking at my reference right now. And I mean, I personally like to print out my references and have them right next to me. That's why. So I'm going to just be leaving out some parts, okay, because this is like decaying paint. So I'm just going to leave out some parts. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to maybe leave that. And it doesn't have to look exactly like the photograph. I just want you guys to use that as reference. And yeah, so how many of you guys are hanging out and painting with me today? And how many of you guys are just kind of hanging out? Like I see a bunch of you guys are just kind of hanging out, which is amazing also. Like, I know that sometimes people kind of hang out and then they take the class later. So this video is available afterwards. And for those of you guys who are painting along with me, you can go to follow our link and you can post up the work. And I would love to see what you guys do after this class, you know, after you guys finish your paintings. I have been seeing a lot of amazing paintings, and I have to say, like, I am super impressed, really excited. And because as a teacher, because I'm an online teacher and I'm kind of just teaching, you know, I'm teaching by myself in a room and I'm talking to you guys online. Sometimes it can feel a little bit like disjointed because like I want to, you know, the beautiful part of teaching is getting to interact with my students. And when you guys post a picture, I get to interact and hang out. And some of you guys also email me pictures or send me pictures through my social media, which is always really exciting. You know, like seriously, I kind of feel like, I mean, the best part of teaching has always been that I would get to interact with people, right? So if this is the way that we're going to interact, I want you guys to participate and show me what you do afterwards. So there's like a link for that. Hello, Tyler. You said that you've never actually painted before. Well, it's a great time to learn how to paint, you know? We have a bunch of classes here on the Artist Network streaming and also on the Artist Network website. And I have a bunch of classes that are also here that you guys can see for free. So if you since you're kind of hanging out, you can also check out the rest of the Painting Together series, you know? So that's really kind of fun. Like, it's kind of nice to have like a free resource to go to. Okay, so we're just gonna leave parts. And you could always put parts back, you know? Like, I like to try to make this class as fairly accessible as I can. Okay. Oh, what colors can make turquoise? Okay, well, what colors can make turquoise? I wish I were mixing it with you guys too. If you guys take a green and maybe a little bit of blue and maybe a little bit of yellow, maybe that would work. I'm trying to think about what, maybe a forest green and you mix that with white. I'm not quite sure actually. Oh yeah, you can actually, somebody's asking if I can share paintings of older videos. Yes, you can actually totally share the paintings from my previous videos. So, you know, we're in episode, I guess we're in episode 6. But if you go to our landing page, you can see each individual episode has its own place where you can post your work. And I think that Artist Network is going to send you guys that link right now. I hope. Yeah, this is a great painting to start with, actually. Kimberly is saying that to one of someone else that's like hanging out there. Like, it's sort of like simple. It's not too complicated. And we're basically just sort of like kind of making an abstraction. Which I myself have never really, I have not done a lot of abstract painting. I mostly like paint a lot of photorealistic paintings. And have any of you guys ever done like abstract painting? Like, I find it to be really like fun, but you would think that someone who like is really comfortable with painting would be really, really, really good at painting, painting abstract, but it's kind of not. Like I used to look at abstract paintings and think, oh, like oh that I could do that. But then when you go and do it, even with all of the experience that I have, it's not nearly what you think it is, you know? So I kind of like that I'm kind of cheating and I'm kind of making like a kind of abstract painting for this class, you know? It's kind of a funny thing. Have any of you guys done abstract paintings before? You guys find it to be maybe really comfortable with it? Maybe this is like the first time you guys are doing something realistic. Okay. Hello to all the new students or all the new people kind of hanging out and seeing. It's kind of nice to just kind of have people hang out and drop in and watch this class. Oh, my friend Greg is saying hello from Colorado. Hello, Greg. Yes, and he's asking me, my friend Greg used to have the art studio a couple of doors down from me. And yes, I still have that studio, but it's on a different floor, Greg. Still sharing it with my same artist friends. I have a separate art studio that I go to, and it's kind of like a lovely little community. And my friend Greg used to be 2 doors down before he moved away to Denver, so I really miss him. And sometimes, you know, like it's kind of nice to kind of not be painting by yourself all the time, which is really what this class is about, right? Like painting together, so we can kind of all make artwork together. Um, yeah, it's kind of it's a lovely little community. If you can ever have a chance to have an art community, it's like really kind of lovely. And also to Greg, we moved to a different floor. Okay, so just gonna do a little bit more, and then we're gonna move on to this panel. It's like a nice, simple, kind of a simple idea, you know? Like if you kind of look closely at really any object, like it could become like a really amazing subject to paint. Oh yeah, someone's telling me, Elizabeth is saying how she's also done abstract, but it's really uncomfortable. Yes, I also really just want to turn it into something as well. But maybe that's also sort of like a really fun kind of exercise, you know? Like painting something really abstract and then making it into something. I used to do that with a lot of my artist friends. We would do squiggles on a page and then we would draw something, you know? And it's kind of cool. And then we would make something out of those little squiggles. And that was always like a game my friends and I would do together, you know? It's sort of like a way of like looking for objects that are already there. And it's kind of fun because, you know, you did it. It was an accident, all those squiggles. And I never thought to do that with painting though. So I kind of love that idea. I'd like to like try to do that too. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, so someone is saying how like they want to start painting, but they're a bit afraid. Um, my all I have to say is it's only art. It's not being not good at something right away is not a bad thing. Like honestly, I mean, I've been doing this for a super long time, and for me, teaching is new, so that's also a learning curve. But even though I'm painting, I basically paint almost every day. Sometimes I go into a painting and I'm still really lost. So I think that no matter what, it's sort of I always say it's getting used to a material, but also getting used to being unafraid, you know, or sort of knowing that there's kind of no consequence to not being good at painting, right? Like if you're not good at it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. Then you don't have to keep doing it. But it's just art. I always tell everybody that it's just art. It's only painting. There's nothing inherently dangerous or scary about it, you know? Like I used to take dance classes and my first class I was so bad I wanted to cry. But then I kept going. I went for 5 years, you know? And that was kind of crazy because I was really bad at it. And I mean, but the thing is, like, it wasn't like I was a professional dancer. You know, you don't have to be a professional painter just because you're taking art classes. You don't, there's no specific reason why you should or should not do something. You know, just doing something out of pure joy is really nice. Okay. Okay, cool. We're laying that in, and then we're going to go back and repaint some of it. We're just going to layer this a little bit more so it's not so translucent. Now, I always like want to emphasize during my classes that the importance of like making layers. You know, you have to, painting, you don't like, people kind of want to paint and they want it to be perfect right away, but in terms of this, not so much. You know, you just keep doing a little bit at a time. And someone was asking me about watercolors. You know, in a lot of ways, watercolors are very similar to any other paint. You know, like they may be a little, they may dry a little bit differently. They may have obviously more water in them, you know, than pigment. But if you, every painting, really good painting, the ones that you see, you know, from Renaissance painters, the ones that you see from like the best like painters, even abstract painters, right? Everybody, like amazing abstract painters, they really kind of work in stages, you know? And the beauty about getting good at art is being able to think ahead and know that what I'm doing right now is not very good, you know, but I'm going to keep working on it until it gets good. And sort of when you start getting good at painting, you can anticipate what the paint, like the different phases of painting. Like right now, I'm showing you how my brain works and how I broke down these ideas, you know? Like I looked at this picture and I thought, okay, I have to put down this layer first, and then I have to put down this layer first. And as you get better at making art, you begin to anticipate and you can break down a painting the same way. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep going over this with the second layer. So someone's asking me about this layer. This layer is dry. So acrylic paint dries really quickly. So, and this layer is already dry. So I'm going from left to right. So everything I already did here was already dry. So that's why I'm doing it. I know I'm anticipating that by the time I get over here, this is going to be dry enough for me to paint over. So that's what I'm doing. So acrylic paint, because like for me, the beauty of acrylic paint is that it dries really quickly. You know, I know that some people get kind of intimidated by the fact that it's kind of dries, but I mean, I think like with any medium, it's really good to embrace the quirks of every material. You know, like you know that watercolor is going to be wetter and that it's going to be harder to control, so maybe you use less water. Maybe you anticipate getting a better piece of paper so it absorbs it better. So I would say the same thing about, you know, acrylic paint. It's to anticipate the fact that it's going to dry. So you have to work very quickly and know that you can go back to it. Okay. So Tyler's saying that they're drawing right now. I would like to, I think that it's a great time. If you're just kind of hanging out here and listening to me paint and drawing, like that's also really cool. You know, I'm also totally okay with that. I know that some of my friends actually like sit and watch this class while they're also working, even though they're not making the painting. So we're just gonna go over this with another layer. You know, we're just gonna go over it, not. Okay, I'm just gonna go over this just a little bit more. Yeah, I'm just using a fairly small flat brush to do this, but you guys can use any brush you want, you feel comfortable with. So I'm just gonna lay down this paint. Maybe add a little bit of brown to that and just sort of keep, oh, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. Just gonna wipe that off. And I can always go back to any of this. Okay. Oh, someone's asking me what kind of easel am I using. I'm using a table. I'm using a table that slants. So sometimes maybe you'll see my painting sliding down because I'm like on a tilted table. I also have easels, which are awesome. I guess it depends on what you guys like to use. Like for this show, it's preferable for me to use a table, but I prefer also using an easel if I want to get really close to it. Okay, so now that I've laid this down a little bit, and I'm just gonna keep maybe adding a little bit more, but I want to move on to the next phase. All right, so I want to start thinking about lightening some of this wood. Okay, like I wanted to get down the paint first because I didn't want to do all of that and then paint over it again. So, okay, so I'm still using this like flat brush, but you could also use like a skinny brush. So I'm gonna take some of this brown and this ochre and some white, and I am going to paint this way. So if you look at the wood grain, some of the wood grain kind of goes in different directions. So honestly, it really doesn't matter if you're going like this, you know, you're gonna go like whatever. So I'm looking at my picture and I'm realizing that this part's a little bit lighter. And I'm just using the edge of my paintbrush, you know. I'm just using, you know, like the very pointy, the very flat part. But you could also use a pointy brush if you want, like a round brush. You could do that. I like to use, you know, whatever is in my hand, which was already a flat brush. Now I want you to just start to brush down. So we're gonna keep doing this repetitively all over. So whatever, whatever I'm doing right now, I'm gonna be doing pretty much for the rest of this wood. Oh yeah, so Elizabeth's asking me about my brush. I'm using whatever, you know. I actually have like a crazy collection of different types of brushes, and I go through brushes really quickly. I like to use these kind of soft brushes. I actually don't love bristly brushes, like the hard brushes. I tried out a lot of different ones, actually. I have a big collection and I kind of go through them and I kind of see what I like. But honestly, sometimes I really like to get like really cheap, a big pack of like really cheap craft brushes from the craft store. Because sometimes there's a few, if you get like a $10 pack of brushes that have like 20 brushes, maybe 10 of them you'll really love, which is, I kind of think is pretty good value. So, you know, like I'm okay with that. So we're just kind of, so I'm going to basically kind of do things like this. Like I'm going to try out different techniques. I'm going to try out things like, so because I'm working on a wood panel, I'm also going to kind of go by what the grain of the gesso is on it. So I'm doing things like that. And I'm sort of like blotting over just areas. And I'm also going to be rotating through my different types of paint. Like sometimes I go through the white, sometimes I touch the ochre, sometimes I touch the umber. And we're just gonna do little things like this. And then kind of pick out little parts to play with, you know. And also I don't want to use too much paint for this. I kind of want to even dry brush a lot during this. So if I dry brush, it kind of does things like that. And it sort of plays like if you're using like a watercolor paper, it's going to really touch the grain, you know, touch the grain of the paper, and that's kind of awesome. Let's see. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for sitting through the painting of the eye. Like a couple of classes ago, I was painting an eye. So I'm really kind of glad that some people are coming back for this class. So I'm going to kind of go and sort of, so right now I decided I'm going to touch, just like pick up a little bit of the umber, and I'm just going to do things like this. So we're just kind of playing, right? Like I really want for this particular lesson for you guys to not get too caught up in what, like you guys can look at the reference as guide, you know? So we're gonna just do little things like that. And I love using this flat brush because you can use the very tip of your brush to go like that, or you can kind of drag it and make like these other like textures. So I like the versatility of having a brush that has like, that I can use it in different ways. You know, so I'm also looking at my photograph, looking at my reference, which you can download if you haven't already, down below. And I'm just sort of looking at that as like a guide and going like, oh, like there's some little bits of wood, little parts here. This part's a little bit lighter. I'm just gonna go, but I'm not using it as like, my reference photo is not like my sole way of like making this painting. Like I'm sort of thinking, oh, some parts are gonna be darker. I want to make this part like darker. I want to widen this part. And so there's a lot of like play for this particular painting, you know? So already like it looks like there's a little bit of wood grain. And I'm also going to switch out and also use a small flat, maybe I'll use a small flat brush or use a small filbert. You could also do a little, actually maybe I'll get a small flat brush. So I have like a tiny flat brush. And I'm just gonna grab a little bit of this white and mix it a little bit with the ochre and just kind of go do things like this. Like just kind of do little bits. And if I have both paint brushes in my hand, I can use them sort of like almost simultaneously with a little bit of black and kind of do things like that. And just like adding little crevices, you know, and then kind of demarcating and also cleaning up things like that. So we're just gonna be doing this like in phases, and in a lot of ways, like you guys can follow exactly what I'm doing, or you can kind of do your own thing with this painting, which is also kind of fun. Okay. A little bit. There we go. Okay, so Elizabeth's asking, when I use a flat brush, I have trouble getting thin lines no matter how lightly I press. Maybe you can switch up your brush. Elizabeth, if you can't get a line with your flat brush, you should just switch up and use maybe a thinner brush. Like you can maybe go into like just get a little, you know, like a thinner brush and do that instead. Because if you can't seem to get like a perfect line, and even with this painting, you don't need to have a perfect line. Like you can just have a pointy brush and you can do this, try to do the same thing. That's why I have, right now in my hand, I have 3 brushes. Okay, I have like a small round brush and I'm using it to do things like this. You know, like if you can't get like a perfect line, which you don't really need to with this painting, if you can't do that, that's totally okay. You can just like switch up your brush. Like I really suggest having good flat brushes, like a pointy brush, some smaller brushes, you know, like just I've got 3 in my hand. So I'm just gonna switch back and forth, you know, and really in a lot of ways I can kind of use them to do like a lot of different things. Like if a tool isn't working for you and you are lucky enough to have other tools, you should use those tools. Okay, so I'm now, hopefully Elizabeth, you have picked up a pointy brush, and I'm also going to just use the pointy brush with you. And I'm just going to do that too. I'm also going to use a little bit more white to lighten up certain areas and just to kind of create imperfections. So this exercise is mostly about like using your eye and picking and choosing what you want to do with your painting. Like, oh, do you want this part a little bit lighter? Do you want this part to be a little bit more jagged? Like, I'm going to make that part a little bit more jagged. And I'm going to take this little white and just sort of make that a little bit lighter. And then I'm not even doing straight lines, really. I'm doing like kind of jagged lines to kind of get like an effect of imperfection. And there. You know, like I'm not making this like super straight. Like the whole point of doing this is we're creating a painting of a painting. We're creating a painting with paint of painting and creating it imperfectly together. So that's kind of cool. Like, see, because I sort of like angled my brush a little bit, it kind of caught the grain of my wood of the panel, and it sort of created this like little jagged edge. Yeah. Oh, someone's saying this would be really fun to do in chalk. Yes, it would be super fun to do this in chalk. Like that would be really fun if you kind of created like a fake door, you know? That would be fun. I have done a little bit of chalk painting, and it's kind of awesome. You know, you'd be kind of surprised if you get like a cheap like set from the dollar store. You can do all of this like different fun stuff with just chalk, you know? Sometimes I like to get paint from the dollar store because it's kind of fun to see what cheaper paint does too, actually. There we go. So that's already kind of looking pretty cool. And if you pick up a little bit of black, you can even start picking up little things like this, you know, and just kind of creating little bits of grain. And I'm going to take a little bit of this turquoise and add a little bit of black to it and sort of dab it in different places. Let's kind of create a little bit, just to think that like maybe at some point this paint had been rubbing off somewhere else. Go. In a lot of ways, it's a very free-form painting that we're doing together. It's kind of a fun exercise, you know. And I suggest you kind of, so, you know, I have this palette of like just the white, the ochre, the siennas, and I kind of just going back and forth and just picking out random paint and seeing where I want to put it. And creating little jagged lines. Oh, Elizabeth's saying she's in the process of painting a bedroom door. Oh, yes. If you do this process, it would be really fun. This is a great way to do like what they call like trompe l'oeil painting, you know? Like decorative painters can make like an iron door look like it's made of wood. You know, like, so this is kind of like something that I love to do. I love to paint like fake architecture, and actually I've done a bunch of murals in which I do kind of make something look like it's there, but it's not really there, you know? I would love to do an entire place where it just looked like it was a bunch of fake doors. Okay, I'm gonna go in with some of this white. And I kind of want to leave, I'm going to add a little bit of sienna in this and just sort of make this go. And kind of going back and forth. There's no rhyme or reason to the way I'm doing this, actually. Here we go. Yeah, I kind of love this because we're kind of making almost like a still life, but we're also making kind of an extraction of a still life. There we go. Like the beauty of like having digital photography now is that you can kind of like cut and paste everything and blow them up so you can really look at the details. Yeah, I kind of think someone's saying that some of their brushes shed. Yeah, some of the cheaper brushes will shed. So, I mean, I don't really know what IKEA brushes are like, but I think that it's really good to try out different brands and see, you know, see what works for you. Because even within like a brush set, some of the brushes will be better than others, you know, if you buy like a craft set. Okay, so I'm just kind of switching back and forth between all these different colors. And I'm going to go back here a little bit, and I'm going to go back to my flatter brush and just kind of go. Oh, someone's asking me if the aqua green is more green in the reference. It might be, you know, if you feel like you want to make, and right now my aqua green is, I haven't like dirtied it up yet. We're going to dirty that up. But, you know, honestly, because this is kind of a painting of paint, it doesn't kind of matter what the reference looks like. Like if you want to make it darker, we're going to make it darker together actually. So like there is no rhyme or reason. Like my screen will look different from your screen, you know, the way my screen will look different for you. And if you want to use like even more green to paint this paint, you can totally do that too. Like I don't want you to be restricted to like just the reference photo because this is like a painting of an illusion practically. If you have like red paint, this could be red, you know, like it doesn't have to look exactly like my reference photo. So I'm just going to keep doing little streaks. So I'm mostly painting. I'm painting sort of like in slants and also in little bits and pieces and kind of dotting from space to space. Okay. And Elizabeth, if you actually do paint your bedroom like this, I want to see it. I want you to send me a picture of it. Okay. And it's kind of going back and forth. And I'm still sort of in mid-tone, and I'm kind of bouncing back from place to place. And I'm going to add like streaks of yellow here, ochre. Okay. And yeah, I'm just going back into like the flat brush, but you guys can totally switch up whatever brush makes you feel comfortable. Okay. And also, if you're not using a brush, you should probably put it in the water. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of white into my ochre and choosing places to lighten up more. So also, see where this the paint parts are? We're gonna make some of those just a little bit darker on the edge. So we're gonna start demarcating it now, you know, where the darks are gonna be, and outlining a little bit where these like cracks are gonna be in the paint. see where the shadow of the paint's going to be. I'm adding a little bit more darks there, a little bit more umber. Right? I'm using a tiny little flat brush, it's a tiny flat brush. Or you can also use your pointy brush, your round brush. And just adding where the shadows are going to be here, just to kind of demarcate where things are going to be. Because I also am going to start dirtying up this paint with you, and that's going to be really fun. We're going to do that with water or medium. So if you don't have medium, it's okay. We're going to do it with water, but not quite yet. We're just going to go into some of these cracks here. A little bit of black and create like a little crack in the wood here. So it doesn't take a lot, you know, like little tiny strokes can create like a crack, and then it looks like there's like a crack in the wood. And I'm going to make these parts a little bit darker to demarcate the edges, and then go back a little bit. I'm just switching back and forth between all my different earth colors and just lightening up parts. Yeah, it's a really great time to kind of take a glance at your reference picture, of course, and choose what you want to paint. Like, you don't have to do everything that's there. Like, I'm kind of looking at my reference picture, I'm looking at my painting as a guide. A little bit more. Yeah, in some places I'm kind of just dry brushing. Okay, someone here, Daniel says, I'm a complete beginner. What paint do you suggest me to use and what brushes? Should I buy really expensive ones? If you are a complete beginner, I don't really suggest you spending tons and tons of money on materials. I actually would say, let's see, what's a really good type? Like, you can go buy some craft paint, you know, from the craft store, or I would say get like a beginner set from like a lot of really good high-end companies like Liquitex and Golden and Blick make high-end and low-end, you know, high-end and low-end paint. So I would say get a small set of a good brand, but like in the lower end, like the cheaper set, and play around with that and see how you feel about that before you start investing in something that's like really expensive. I think that you can make a really amazing painting with cheap paint. Like, that's what I think. And I think that you can make amazing paintings with cheap paintbrushes. So I love to get a go-to, like I live on the East Coast, so I go to a place called Michael's and I get their set of like 50 brushes, and they probably cost about like $10. So I suggest you getting a ton of different types of brushes and just playing around with them and see what you like. Like, I really don't think that, I think that if you're beginning, and you know, and we're all beginners, like everyone has begun in many different ways. Even when I began acrylics, I was using craft paint. If you're like, I think that investing should be something you think about in the long run. Like, if you get really good at something, you should, you know, then you can invest in it if you want to keep doing it and keep doing it, you know. Like, if you just want to kind of play around with it, I suggest getting a lower end brand of a higher end brand, you know. and seeing how you feel about it. Like, I think that you should mess around and get as many hours in before you decide to like buy something really, really expensive. You know, like, have you ever made any art besides like painting before? I'm gonna wait for that answer. Let's see. I'm gonna keep doing these little marks, and I can use a little brush and kind of create little light marks here. Kind of want to make things a little bit lighter now that I'm here. Yeah, so basically we can work on this painting forever, but we're not going to do that just because it's like such a little, like we're doing such a little things this entire time. Just gonna darken up the edges of this, where this paint's gonna be. So, you know, these edges are very fuzzy, so I'm just gonna clean up those edges and then go back. So I'm just kind of bouncing around the painting. Like, I wanna make some of this stuff a little bit lighter. I might want to add a little bit more turquoise here, and then I kind of want to dirty up some of that paint, so we're going to do that too. And clean up some of that, and then go in, and I think I'm going to make a little crack in the paint here. My little brush. And I'm not doing like a straight line, I'm doing like different things. So someone's telling me that I should make videos where I talk about doing the basics. So there are actually some basic things that I actually kind of feel like I go through a lot of different like basic ideas as I'm going into this, but I totally see how like it can be intimidating to do a painting from start to finish. But in a lot of ways, actually, I have actually taught a lot of beginners how to paint by teaching them how to paint from beginning to end. So Daniel, this is actually an ongoing series that I've been doing every Thursday at 3 p.m. And we have a backlog actually of like a bunch of my previous videos. So this is actually my 6th episode. So I think that in terms of learning, I kind of think in a lot of ways it's really good to go. I think that for me, the way I learned was learning how to paint from start to finish. Like, I actually have taught I have mostly only taught beginners, and by teaching them, I generally paint like a landscape with them, or I paint something like this, and I kind of go from beginning to end. And by the end of it, you've actually learned a lot. So I'm actually like a really big believer in thinking that you learn by doing. You know, like sometimes the people that I have actually taught have never ever painted before, and I go in and I show them, you know, a picture, we're going to paint like a landscape, and then they kind of freak out. Just like, I've done many of these classes, and sometimes people go, oh no, I'm not sure if I can do this. But I think that if you look and you kind of go, all right, like I'm going to sit down with the materials and go and do this video with this person from beginning to end, like you'll actually learn a lot. Like I'm not really sure. I think we all kind of learn in a different way. Like I can have videos where I show you, okay, I'm going to teach you how to dance. I'm going to teach you steps, but you don't actually learn how to dance unless you're actually dancing with a partner, right? So I would say in terms of like taking these classes, as I said, like there's like a whole already, like there are about 6 of these videos available right now on YouTube, is that if you like do a course, you know, and you do like, oh, I'm going to do one painting and do another painting, and then by the end of it, you really kind of have learned a lot, you know. And someone here is talking about Bob Ross. Yes, I love Bob Ross. I would say that the reason why I became a painter when I was a child was because of Bob Ross. So Bob Ross also, in a lot of ways, like when you watch his videos, he doesn't like, he talks about the paint, but he also sort of just has you paint along with him, right? So I am actually a great believer in learning by doing, you know? Like I can show you, like as I'm painting, I'm going to talk a little bit, I talk about technique, but as we kind of go along, like you're not really going to learn unless you actually do it, right? So I kind of hope that that's not sort of like a long-winded way of saying like, oh, I can't teach you basics, but I actually think that in a lot of these videos, you're learning basics and you're sort of adding to it, you know? So, but also, as I said, everybody learns really differently. And actually on Artist Network, I actually do have a series of other videos available where I do a little bit more painting, and I also have a sketchbook, a set of videos about sketchbooks and how you can like build up your sketchbook and how to do a practice with sketchbook. So it's kind of like anything else. Like I think that the only way to get really good at something is by learning. And I actually learned how to paint with an artist for the last like 20 years by kind of doing copies of old masters. And also it's something like you're starting things from beginning to end. And that's also a way to learn something, right? So I would say that I can have like a dozen videos showing you basically how to layer paint, but if you can't, or if you're not like sort of knowing a way to like implement it, it can be also really difficult to like to actually be able to use that in real life, you know? Like I can do a whole thing about how to mix colors, but then if you're not mixing colors like in real time in real life, then it's sort of like I don't really find that to be super useful, you know? But definitely, I mean, there's definitely different ways that we all learn. We can learn in phases. We can also learn by kind of being thrown into the pool, so to say, you know, so to speak. And I kind of like to think that I like to throw you guys into the pool and just paint with me, you know. And as I said, I have mostly painted with beginners. I think almost every one of my students have been people who are older, you know, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who have never ever painted before. And then by the end of it, they're like, oh, like I just got thrown into the pool and I was able to do it. But because, you know, in a lot of ways, like painting it's just art. It's not dangerous. It's not scary. You know, if you're not good at something once, you do it again and then you try to get better at it. Like I wasn't automatically good at painting, you know. I don't think, I doubt most people have been. I doubt Bob Ross was, you know. So, I mean, that's my sort of long-winded way of saying like, you know, if you just keep painting, you'll get good at it. And I sort of go through a lot of my different techniques with these videos, but I sort of implement them with you at the same time, you know. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more over here, with a little bit more of like a light color with this big brush. And then what I'm going to do with you guys is sort of dirty up this paint. But I also I'm kind of looking at my painting and I want to do all these other things with it. So if I take like a really thin brush with some black and some umber, and I'm just going to do like things like little cracks and kind of do some wavy lines, and then I create a little crack. And Daniel, you're saying that you've never painted before? It's totally okay. As I said, almost all of my students, I mean, not here necessarily, but almost all of my students that I've taught in real life, I used to teach a weekly painting class to people who were just walking in for an art party. And I would do this, I would teach these classes during an art party, and I would say that almost no one in those classes, and I did that twice a week for about a year, almost everyone in that class had not touched any art supplies since they were children. And these were people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And you know what? I would say that almost everyone came out of that class going, wow, I can't believe I learned how to do that in 2 hours, you know? And I kind of want you to feel that way here, but because you can run this class again after this airs, then you can kind of go back and just keep practicing, you know? Like all of these videos are available after we air. And right now, as I said, there are like 6 of them already. You can go back. You don't have to do these in real time with me, but sometimes it's really nice to kind of watch, see how I do it, and then go back and try to implement it yourself. Like you don't get a great hand, you know, to work right away. Like you have to really practice. It's like anything. It's kind of like a sport, you know? Like you don't automatically know how to shoot a basket. You're not automatically great at bowling, unless you are by some freak accident, you know? Like I think that it's like anything else. Like I like to think of art as a sport. So I'm taking a little bit of these like skinny brushes and I'm just sort of adding little lines and little cracks into this, you know, a little bit at a time. Yeah, so like I mean I'm a high believer, like I'm a big believer in like just telling everyone art is not scary. You know, like the worst that can happen is that you're not great at it at first. And you know, I have painted, God, so many paintings that you guys can't even believe, right? So much art. And sometimes they're not that great. And I do them all the time. You know? Sometimes you're not even good at the thing that you're supposedly good at. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. And I have given up on so many paintings over my life. And then there are paintings that I thought were going to be awful, and then I rescued them, you know? So really, in a lot of ways, it's about like kind of anticipating things as you kind of go along. Like if like there are certain things that I'm not great at painting, so I have to keep doing it. I do it over and over and over again until I'm like really good at it. There are certain mediums that I'm not great at, and I do them over and over again until I'm good at it. Like I've only been doing acrylic paint for about 5 years, and I taught myself acrylic paint. And I never thought that I'd ever be teaching it. So here I am teaching it with you guys, you know, like hopefully you guys are learning. So like anything else, it's just sort of phases. Okay. And then we're gonna just sort of darken up some more of this. A little bit more, darken up these areas. And then I'm gonna teach you guys how to dirty up some of this paint. And that's gonna be super fun. Like, I'm really excited to do this part with you guys. Like, I love the idea of teaching you guys like how to make like faux finishes, you know, which is sort of like creating the illusion of something. Like, this is kind of fun for me. Like, I love doing this kind of thing. Okay, so I'm just sort of adding a little bit more here in the edges, cleaning up my edges. Okay, cleaning them up. And then we're going to also go back. We're putting all of our, so I'm making the bottom parts more dark, you know, and so it looks like there's going to be like a little cast shadow. And go. Like, and I'm not, yeah, I'm looking at the photograph, but I'm not really looking at the photograph as I do this. And then I'm going to add some more, maybe some more lights somewhere. Yeah, sometimes it's really kind of nice to do a little bit of dry brushing. I'm taking a little bit of this turquoise too and kind of adding it in to different parts. Go. All right, let's do something kind of fun. I'm gonna get a medium, I'm gonna use like a slightly bigger flat brush, or maybe I should use, no, I don't wanna use the big one. I wanna have a little bit more control. I'm using a big filbert, but you guys can use any sort of like nice flat brush. So I'm gonna take some of this Umber, a little bit of the Sienna, and a little bit of the Ochre, and I'm gonna use some medium. So I kind of dab this with the medium, and I'm mixing, and I'm kind of making, maybe you can't see it here, I'm gonna move this over. And I'm mixing kind of like a translucent film. So you can do this with water. Like, I don't want you to feel like just because you don't have this medium, you can't do this. So you can do it with also with water. And I'm gonna add a little bit of water to this. So I'm basically using Umber, Ochre, a little Sienna, and I'm mixing it in. So somebody was asking me about this. We're mixing it in with some medium, and I'm gonna blot it a little bit. And see, when I do that, it's kind of like a translucent film. So what we're gonna do is, very quickly, I'm gonna go this way and just create like a little bit of, I'm gonna dirty up this surface, okay? Look how cool that is. Like, we're not gonna do it to all of it. And I'm just gonna dirty it up. I'm just gonna sort of scumble, rather I'm just gonna, meaning I'm doing things like this. I'm just kind of like creating, I'm not doing anything crazy, you know? And that's the whole point. I'm kind of making what they call a glaze, which is like a very translucent film of paint. So if you don't have medium, just use water. So we're just going to be sort of moving it around on the surface. And you can kind of do things like this. You kind of pat it down, or you're going to brush. And I haven't even like dipped my brush back in. Like, I don't have a lot, you don't need a lot of color to do this. Like, we're just gonna dirty this up. Like, this might be really fun. Yeah, so now somebody's saying, oh, now it looks like the color of the reference, because we weren't done yet, you know? So now we're just gonna dirty it up. Isn't that cool? Like, I don't have to do anything else. We're just kind of dirtying it up, dirtying this up, and then we're gonna keep adding on to that. And maybe even a little bit more brown, just to kind of mess around with that. Doesn't have to be a perfect thing. Kind of creating. There we go. So it's kind of nice and dirty, you know? And also, if you kind of let that alone a little bit and let it dry for just a couple of seconds, you can kind of move it around with your brush. And then that kind of creates like a whole other thing. So I'm gonna just start adding a little bit more. And then we're gonna paint on top of this, you know? Like, we're not quite done. We're obviously we can work on this forever, but we're not gonna work on this forever. But I wanted to teach you guys, like, the beauty of using a little bit of medium, right? And it's kind of streaky, so you can kind of keep doing that. Okay. And you can do that over like some parts of it too, but I don't want to flatten this out too much. So while this is drying, I'm going to start making some of these parts a little bit darker, because I want this part to be a lot darker. So I'm going to just sort of, I'm going to go from left to right, and then sort of create just a few more darks, because I think these parts aren't dark enough for me. So kind of create a little bit more. In between. Not all of it. I don't think I'm going to make all of it dark. I'm just going to darken up parts of it. Yeah, when I thought about doing this with you guys, I wanted to pick a subject that you wouldn't think to do, right? This is kind of like a fun surprise, different kind of lesson. Like I can paint an eye with you guys, or I can paint a bird, paint a cat, but like this is kind of like a fun sort of like chill out kind of like episode. Okay, I'm gonna add some darks there, and I'm going to, what I'm also gonna do is now pick different parts. I'm gonna take my, let me see, which brush do I want to use? I have a lot of different brushes. I don't want to make you guys go crazy. I'm just going to go back to my regular flat brush. Or you can use a smaller one. I might use a smaller one. Let's see. No, it's fine. I'm going to take a little bit of this white and a little bit of this ochre. And I'm going to go right into that umber, that like back into the turquoise. And I'm going to pick little parts. I'm going to pick these parts to make it a little bit lighter. I'm going to pick things like that to be a little bit lighter. And so kind of random, you know, no rhyme or reason to why I'm picking out what I'm doing. I just kind of am trying out what looks best here. And right, just to kind of play with it, because this is kind of like old peeling paint. That already looks kind of cool, right? How are you guys doing so far? How many of you guys are following along, and how are you doing right now? Yeah, what is your progress? Are you guys able to follow along to this one? This one's a very different kind of painting we're doing together. So it's sort of like almost like working at your own pace and under your own volition, which is kind of different and fun. And I might add a little bit of medium to that too, and just sort of brush. If I add a little bit of medium to that, that could also make it kind of extend a little bit more. And so I'm kind of bouncing around, taking a little bit of turquoise and white. I'm taking a little bit of this ochre and white and kind of like doing little things. So parts like that is going to look like, and then once we put the cracks in there, it's going to look like it's actually peeling. Okay. And you can use a smaller brush. I'm just happen to be using a big brush. Oh, so Glenda is saying, just dropping in. So Glenda, this is a whole series called Painting Together with Acrylics. And I right now am doing this series every Thursday. And you can check out like all the videos I have in this series. It's called, as I said, it's called Painting Together with Acrylics for Artist Network. And this is our 6th class. And we're running it every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, because I'm in New York. And this is like a whole series of different types of videos. And if you go, and I think Artist Network could actually like put up a link to videos about like the landing page for this entire series. And also like a little bit more about what I do, So my name is Gigi Chen, and you can kind of see that in the show notes, and you can kind of look me up. And you can also see all the videos I do for Artist Network and also on my own. So that's kind of like a fun little thing. But yeah, if you want to ever sit and paint with me, Glenda, next week also at 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube right here for Artist Network is going to be another class. And next week we're going to be painting a cat and learning about lighting. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and use my smaller brush because this big brush is making me crazy. So I'm taking a little smaller brush and taking a little bit more turquoise. yeah, in the Artist Network landing page on YouTube, you're also going to see like a video about me as well, and that's also there. So I think, yeah, I think Artist Network just put up the page for you. And oh, thank you, Glenda. Thank you for dropping in. I hope you kind of sit and paint with us sometime. Okay, so I'm kind of just bouncing back. I'm using a little bit of turquoise, some white, some ochre, and I'm just sort of like adding little things. And then our final touch will be to add like the cracks. So I'm not, as you can kind of see, I'm kind of randomly adding parts. Like I'm kind of just making decisions as I go along. I'm not like really, I'm following the photograph, but I'm also kind of following my own instincts, you know? Okay, and I'm doing, oh yeah, someone is saying that they just saw my, I actually have a few videos with Artist Network, and you guys can kind of, I think they'll probably put up a link for that, but alongside these videos, I actually have been doing work with Artist Network for the last couple of years. I have some video interviews. I have a video series about how to jumpstart your artistic practice with a sketchbook, and I have other acrylic videos available with them. And yeah, I have like a bunch of, and I can also write for their magazines. So you can find all that in their landing page, a little bit more about me. And on the YouTube channel, I think they have like a video of what I do, like some work that I've done for them. And that's kind of like, it's been a good relationship with them, you know? So if you also want to learn a little bit more about Artist Network, you should go to artistnetwork.com, and they have so many amazing resources from like dozens of other artists that you can also learn from. You know, like they have an amazing pool of talent that they work with, and I'm really lucky to be doing this series with you guys and with them. So I'm going to just do a little bit more, add a little bit more lights. Let's see. And just sort of picking out parts and just lightening and darkening, like nice and it's a nice and chill class today. Keep adding little things. Hello, Mandy Lake from Chicago. I'm so happy they're hanging out with us. Yeah, I hope you get to watch this whole video again later. Let's see. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you. Elizabeth says she's seen a lot of my videos. I'm really happy about that. Like sometimes you make things, you know, and you kind of hope that people learn from what you do. Okay, I'm going to pull some of this down. And don't be shy to post your work on the landing page later. Like, so for every episode on the landing page, you can post the work that you do for that particular episode. And I know some of you guys are shy. I know a lot of you guys have actually reached out to me outside of Artist Network, and you can totally find me on social media. And if you don't want to post your work, because I know sometimes people are really shy about showing off their work in public, like you can also like message me like your work. And I've actually been answering a lot of questions separately from this class, and I think it's really great. Like because I am sort of, even though I'm kind of talking to you guys here, I am kind of in a room by myself in my own apartment, like making things and talking into the ether and hopefully reaching out to some of you guys, you know. So it's really nice when some of you guys like send me a message and show me what you're doing. Like I kind of really appreciate it. But I also really want to see you guys post things on the landing page for each episode, because like I want you guys to be able to do this as a community, you know. Like I think that's like sort of the whole point of, and that's why we call this show Painting Together, because I want you guys to be painting together with me and also with each other. And it's such a great place to sort of share what you're doing, and then we can all be a little art community together. Okay, so this is kind of cool, right? This is kind of really getting there. I am gonna bring out a pointy brush, a round brush as they call it. Okay, so I've got my pointy brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of black and mixing it a little bit with the umber. And now I'm going to pick out Okay, so I'm gonna make a little crevice there and then sort of make a little crack there. And that's kind of cool. I'm gonna use a little bit more umber because I don't like it being too dark. And I'm going to pick out that this is gonna be a crack a little bit more. So my painting is a little tacky. And then we're going to create a little crack here, or a little hole. And then we're gonna make, let's see, maybe just umber. Maybe just umber, and then we're going to do, I'm gonna do a little bit like something like that. And little cracks here. So isn't that great? This is kind of a, you don't have to do a lot to create like an illusion. And then we're gonna do a little bit. I'm gonna do little dashes. If you look at the photograph, like they have like these little tiny little cracks. So I'm not gonna do all of them because that's too much, you know. I don't want to overwork it. And do like little cracks here. And then two. Tiny little things. So I'm just going to go from left to right and create little things. I can also go into there with turquoise and kind of do little things there. Maybe I'll take a little bit of this ochre and sort of create a nice patch of paint here. And that's like a whole other color. And then we're gonna play with that too. And I'm gonna just do just cleaning up some of these edges. And also maybe adding so it really doesn't take a lot to make something look kind of old, you know, just like you need a few, let's kind of dirty up the paint. So I'm just gonna do a few more cracks in this. I think this is like a painting that we can work on forever, right? We're not gonna do that. How are you guys doing? How many of you guys are you guys keeping up with me? For those of you guys who are painting with me. Like this is like a nice painting. You can kind of do this one on your own in a lot of ways, you know. Okay, I'm gonna clean up some of these edges. And little things. And maybe add a little bit more of, I'm gonna lighten up some of this too. I just wanna have some of it pop a little bit better. I want to lighten up some of that. Then we go back to put little cracks in the wood. I'm gonna put little cracks here. There. Just kind of bouncing back and forth, you know. We're not using a lot of different colors today. We're just usually mostly brown and ochre. And it's gonna go down here. And I'm just gonna lighten up this ochre with a little bit of white and turquoise. And kind of make these paint marks come out too. And then I'm gonna go and like make that there. And then we're gonna go over that with a little bit of create cracks there too. And little some dark down here. So we're kind of getting to it. We're kind of getting to the end of this, right? I mean, as I said, you guys can work on this. I can really work on this forever, but I don't want to because that's kind of, you know, it's a little too much because you can kind of spend all of your time just putting little cracks in the paint. There. Then we'll lighten up, add more darks. Okay. How are you guys feeling? How many of you guys have like been keeping up? Okay, I'm just gonna do a little bit more. I really hope I get to see what you guys do with this. I hope a lot of you guys have been painting along with me here today. Okay, pull a hole there, and you can darken the lines between the wood if you want. Someone's asking about that. you can do whatever you feel like with this one, actually. So I'm just going to make parts of that a little bit darker. Kind of getting there a little bit. I'm going to do just a little bit more. And then what I might call it, you know? Like, I really like working on this painting just because it's kind of fun. Okay. And I'm going to lighten up a little bit more some of these parts. And maybe I'll lighten up parts of this. I'm just going to dry brush some of these lights. Oh, someone's asked me about my paint. Yes, these are all heavy body paints. These, I'm actually using all Utrecht paint, and they're all heavy body. So they're pretty creamy. They're not super liquidy, and they work really well if you add a little bit of medium to it too. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I actually really like the Utrecht paint. It's been a nice situation with the paint. Like I use a lot of different brands, but I do really like this brand too. Yeah, I think that heavy body is really like a nice, like, you know, I think there's also like a lot of like high-end and low brands that make like a heavy body. So you don't need to like spend a ton, you know, on your paint. And I'm gonna do a little bit more. I'm gonna dirty up a little bit of this yellow. Just gonna dirty it up a little bit, and then otherwise, I think we are getting to the end. Yeah, I think that we're getting to finish. I'm gonna do a little bit more, a couple more cracks in this. Oh yeah, Glenda, if you do watch this, you can go to our landing page and also on Artist Network and post your paintings. So yeah, I really want you guys to post your paintings. I want to see what you guys do with this class. Okay, so take a deep breath. We've been working for almost 2 hours on this painting. So I really hope that you guys have been following along and taking care of this piece with me. It's like a really fun one. It's a bit different. It's not just sort of like, oh, we're painting a very particular kind of subject, you know? Okay, so let's just kind of let our painting chill out with the painting for a second. Okay. So, well, I really hoped you guys have enjoyed painting along with this. This piece with the wood and the details and all the little cracks and the nooks and crannies that we generally don't even pay attention to when we see like an old piece of furniture or old piece of door, you know? So I really want you guys to go to our landing page, and I want you guys to post all the work that you guys do for each episode. I am dying to see, really excited. And also go to artistnetwork.com, where they have so many resources with so many different types of artists, all sorts of mediums, and you can check out all the videos and all the resources they have there as well. And I really look forward to painting along with you guys again. So next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be painting another piece with you, and then we can all paint together. So I'll see you then. Thank you.